Hello, I'm Jonathan Mason,
And I am Sonia Madison.
and welcome to Law Unfiltered, where we discuss various legal issues and current events and talk about, our perspective from a attorney point of view. Sonia, no one can avoid that, the pending election and all the coverage that it's getting. We could talk about it sort of globally about some of the things that are going on, but I think you wanted to talk about an issue or two
Right.
specifically, and one of the things that comes up from time to time in various cities and even in presidential elections like now is minimum wage. And so where are we with the candidate, either or both of the candidates, in terms of where they stand on the minimum wage and raising that?
Right, it's probably hard to tell because with these past couple of debates, they've been just completely, we use the word awful, but just surprising and disturbing. But what I gathered from the first debate is Hillary Clinton wants to raise the minimum wage to at least $12 an hour. And what Donald Trump wants to do, and the question was presented as how would you fix the economy? What Donald Trump wants to do is pretty much provide all these tax incentives for corporations to get them to bring their jobs over here, and thereby he's saying that would create more jobs domestically. And I find it interesting. First of all, the minimum wage comes up every year. President Obama, I remember in several State of the Union addresses, says he wants to raise the minimum wage, and I think at the time he was around $10 or $11 per hour. And throughout the years, you get a lot of people striking, or a lot of labor unions saying that we should raise the minimum wage. The problem, in my opinion, with a national minimum wage is that I do think it will decrease the number of jobs, particularly lower paying jobs, rather than increase. And so I prefer minimum wage to be something that's state governed, because particularly when you think about New York, and Secretary Clinton uses New York as an example. According to her, they've raised the minimum wage to $11 an hour with the expectation that by, I'm going to say 2021, it will be up to 15, just by constantly monitoring the cost of living and other factors that could be at play to determine whether or not it should be raised. New York is an expensive state to live in for its cost of living is concerned. Now, say here in Georgia, it doesn't compare. So, I mean, one, we already know Georgia's not going to raise the minimum wage, but two, the cost of living is not equivalent to what's in New York. And so the constituents, or at least the people in Georgia, may not have the same fire to increase the minimum wage as constituents in New York, when it's clear you pretty much are going to spend, $3,000 for a one-bedroom apartment a month. That makes sense. And so when we're talking about presidential elections and the, just what they should really campaign, I think they really should focus more on international issues and not the minimum wage. And interesting enough, Seattle did an experiment, well, not experiment, they had an ordinance raising the minimum wage similarly to what New York is doing, and they found that a lot of the lower paying jobs did decrease. While they did see some improvement in the economy, they also saw that the cost of goods and services increased. And so to some degree, it kind of balanced each other out. Yeah, you've raised the minimum wage, but you've also raised the cost of goods, because now these companies have to allot for the fact that they have to pay their employees more.
Right. I had a couple of observations about something you said about the effect of a higher minimum wage leading to the lower number of jobs.
Right,
for the lower paying jobs,
yeah.
And a couple of observations. One, I noticed, like, if you go into, like, here we have Quick Trip, a convenience store, and a lot of convenience stores they have like kind of like kitchens, restaurants, not restaurants, but kitchens where they'll prepare your food. And so when you go in, they have like a touch screen.
Yeah.
And you pick the bread you want, you do everything on the screen. And then there are people in the back who are preparing it, but there's no one who's taking the order. And I just think, it's just a matter of time. And I've actually heard some reports before fast food restaurants do the same thing, where you go in and you just press some buttons on a screen, and then your
Right.
order goes back to the back. And so that's going to cut some jobs right
Well,
there.
and Seattle noticed their main cuts were in the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
I think that the study showed at least 1,000 jobs were eliminated in the restaurant industry due to the cost of living wage. Cost of minimum wage. And when you think about even going to the grocery store, they have so many self checkouts, and you don't
Right.
see as many people working as you probably
Right.
recall seeing, years past. But now I'm not saying that Donald Trump's solution is better, because that's again bringing companies over here, or having them have workers here instead of internationally. That's not a new concept. We've had Republicans say that for years as well. But more tax incentives for corporations, I don't think that's going to help either. For one, corporations that come also get tax incentives from states, and so where you've got tax incentive, and then it's like, well, what are you paying? What your pretty much contribution is to bring jobs. That's pretty much what we hope that you will do, so that then we can tax these employees and bring it back to the government. And so I'm not saying that that's a better plan. I do think I'd prefer not to give out a lot of tax incentives, because again, they're already getting it from the state. But I'm not saying I have the solution either, but I think both of them need to revamp. Let's think of something that's going to be more logical.
Yeah. The other observation I was going to make is about what played out in D.C. How minimum wage kind of became a pawn in this battle between the local government and, in that case, Walmart, because Walmart was considering opening some stores in the district, and there was a basically almost like threats from Walmart, like, if you raise the minimum wage, we're not going to open up these stores in the district. And so a lot of people were like, well, we got to have Walmarts, and there are neglected areas in the city where they really need Walmart, but and they'll say, well, in order to keep our prices low like we do, we can't
Right.
afford to pay the wages. And so, it put, and at the center of the issue was the minimum wage, but I think now the minimum wage in DC is about $11.50 an hour, and there's talk of it even going higher. Now, you also talked about President Obama, and do we have a national, or are they talking about national minimum wage, or do we have a minimum wage for federal employees, and then that doesn't apply to non-federal employees?
Right. Well, I'd imagine each department is different, because the way it works is there's a budget there's a federal budget, there's a state budget, and so within those budgets is how you determine, okay, how much are we going to pay our employees? I'd imagine some of them we're just going to make sure we pay this amount and up, and some of them may be lower, some of them may be higher. There is a federal just minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, and so obviously federal government can't go below that. That's there, but there is no law that says that they have to pay them a certain amount. Now, from my understanding, when you do work from the federal government, you do get a lot of benefits. And so I'd imagine that for the most part, they try to avoid having employees that are just making the bare minimum, but they also contract out a lot. And so when you're talking originally about these lower paying jobs, like, just maintenance and stuff like that, I imagine that they're contracting that stuff out. And then those employees that are under that contract are probably making minimum wage just through another employer, just not, directly to the federal government. But one thing that I think is important that they haven't talked about, they being the candidates, is the education. Because to me, that is a better solution. Let's talk about how are we going to improve education, particularly for generational poverty, or for people who have this cycle of being in poor neighborhoods and not being able to get beyond these lower paying jobs. I think that might spur for a better conversation than talking about increasing minimum wage or giving tax incentives.
But in that situation, wouldn't you really just be talking about sliding certain people out and someone else sliding into those slots? Because don't we have to have someone who does those jobs? Or are you saying, well, those jobs should pay people more? Because if you educate people and they move on to better paying jobs, so what happens to those? you know,
in the
those
ideal
service jobs,
world,
and I don't, and I'm not degrading anyone's job or
yeah.
anything, but
I would imagine in an ideal world, those really low paying jobs, particularly like the fast foods, and those are probably really for like teenagers or college students. I mean, people that this is a means to a bigger end, not this is where I'm giving my livelihood. I mean, that's again the ideal world. I'd hate for someone with 4 kids really relying on being a cashier at McDonald's to support
right.
4 kids. So I don't think those jobs will get eliminated by no means, but I think those jobs will be seen as that this is to get you to the next level, not to support you and a family of 2 or 3 people.
Okay.
Ideally, you know, in the perfect world, and that, you know, that's too fair. I mean, not everyone is going to benefit, but I'd also imagine a lot of people that are voting with the hope that things get better, not because my wage has increased, but because I have better opportunities. And particularly when you look at the Republican Party and people that have voted for Trump, what they're saying, or at least in what I'm hearing them saying, is I want to work hard and get whatever compensation commensurate to how hard I work. And so usually those people aren't saying, I want to work hard as a cashier at McDonald's and get paid $12 an hour. What they're saying is, I want to work hard and get to my highest potential and then be paid a substantial amount of money. And I'd imagine Democrats are saying that too. And that's why I don't think that topic is really something that should determine who you vote for. But again, I'm not agreeing with Trump either. I do not want more tax incentives for corporations. To me, ultimately, then they're just not paying anything, and we're just hoping that they bring in more jobs.
So, last question. 2 years after the election, so into 2018, will we have a higher minimum wage?
I would be very surprised. I mean, it's been $7.25 for a while. And again, this is something that President Obama has brought up first and second term of his administration. And so I doubt it'd be a change. But perhaps Georgia, which I would be surprised if they did it, but other states may get on board, or other cities like Seattle did, may get on board and change there. But I'd be surprised if in 2 years it's up to beyond $7.25, but definitely not $12.
Well, I'm gonna save the tape and
play it back in 2 years. Yeah, that
yeah.
sounds good. A good idea.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening.
We enjoyed it, and hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on Law Unfiltered.